Mason is CEO of Caspian Agency. They produce these incredible events, and she actually happens to teach for us at San Diego State in our Master's in Meeting and Event Management program. So Heather is going to give you a little presentation on one of the most extraordinary events I've ever seen. And without further ado, Heather, over to you.
All right. Thank you, Carl. And what a cool presentation to follow from Andrew. I mean, that was just amazing. I was so impressed with the immersive experiences that he was designing. And I just felt myself wanting to go to that fashion show. And I don't like fashion shows, but if I could be there in the woods and drink carpet soups, anyway, it took me away. I love it. Well, I am here to close us out and talk about event science. Carl knows I love to talk about event science. That is the slogan of Caspian Agency. And I founded Caspian Agency 16 years ago. I'm the CEO, and we have teams all around the world, which I'll tell you about in a minute. And as Carl mentioned, we work predominantly with social good organizations, big foundations. So Rockefeller Foundation, United Nations, Skoll Foundation, Dalio Foundation, Code for America, New America Foundation. I could go on, but I won't. But that is really our bread and butter. So we like to say we are change the world adjacent. So we're right next to the people that really make things happen in the world. And one of our latest clients, which I'm really excited about, is ending pandemics. And what a great name for a client right now, right? I mean, clearly we have a pandemic to end. So really happy to pick them up. But the one I'm going to talk to you about right now is one that we just did at the beginning of April. And how I'm going to talk about this over the next, I guess, 25 minutes or so is first I'll tell you the specs of the event. So what was it? You know, what were the bottom line stats? Then I'm going to go through 5 of our Caspian 10 essentials and how they applied to the event. And I'll tell you about the 10 essentials in a second. And at the end, I'm going to tell you about why I think right now is the most exciting time to be in the events industry, or even in the creation of experiences industry. Because even though we're in the COVID times and we're not quite out yet, what it has done is given rise to a cracked earth, that there were so many things of innovation and disruption and creativity waiting to burst out in our industry. And this time has actually allowed that to happen. So stick with me, because we're going to get there at the end. But first, I will tell you nuts and bolts. What the heck did we do? So this event was over 3 days, all virtual, and it was in Hopin, which I know I'm in right now. We also used Zoom, which I'll talk about. And over those 3 days, it was 24 hours a day for 3 solid days. And we had a global audience that was tuning in. So there were pre-recorded segments, there were live breakouts happening at any old time. And we had people all over the world speaking all different languages in all different time zones. We actually employed, we had a global audience, 4,000 to 5,000 at the high. It all fluctuated. And it went down to about 500 in the wee hours. So anywhere between those. We had a staff of about 15 to 18 stewards. And that's what we call room captains or chat room monitors. We had 8 project managers that were in the lead up and also in charge on the days of. And I have to give a big shout out to Erin Scholes and Allison Anderson, who I think a lot of you know, at San Diego meetings. They were a partner in this, in that they trained my team at Caspian how to use Hopin. So highly recommend them. They're excellent at this medium. So it was fantastic to have them aboard. So I've been doing this, like I said, for 16 years, my own company, and then I worked in events about 4 or 5 years before then. So I'm clearly only 24 years old. But I'm really excited about it, because everything that I looked at starting way back when is coming to fruition now. So how do the 10 essentials fit into this event? Well, the 10 essentials, when I first started way back when, I looked around and I thought, there's no methodology for how people create and structure strategy and then lead into execution for an event. And yet every other industry has it. If you start a burger joint, there's a way of creating an idea for that, and then you execute it. And in events, to me, there's mistaken belief. And actually, I'm going to even say harmful belief, harmful, the awful belief that the big heads over here come up with the idea for the event, and then the logistic people execute it. And it's a handoff in the middle. And that is absolutely devastating, damaging, and wrong thinking for our industry and for us to be able to actually create the type of experiences and events we need to. So the 10 essentials actually are side by side. The strategy and the logistics are side by side all the way through. And that is what they do. They start with success metrics, they go through audience mix, content mapping, roles and responsibilities, communication plans. I can go on. I won't. You can read about it on our website. Please check it out. But the 5 I'm going to focus on today begin with success metrics. I wrote these down so you could see them. I don't like to do the slides because then I get to be a really tiny head. So I'm just going to show you. So success metrics, audience mix, and content mapping are the first 3 I'm going to talk about. And what we looked at when we first started working with this particular event is the client had already picked the venue. By venue, I mean the technology platform, because now that we're in technology, venues are technology platforms. And that was a bit of an issue because what you don't want to do is guide your success metrics, your goals, and already limit them by, in a sense, having to put your content in a venue that already exists. It's a little bit like picking the Hyatt and then going, I wonder what conference I'll have there. So we would have rather had said, what do you want to accomplish? Who is the audience? Where are they around the world? What do they need? Do they need translation? Do they need different types of accessibility, time zones? Can this platform do that? Then let's map your content. We struggled a little bit, but I think that's where the Zoom came in. And this is where my first principle is, if you're looking at your success metrics, what you're trying to do, your audience mix, who are these people? What do they need from you? Why are they going to come to you? And then you use your success metrics and your audience mix to get your content. That will tell you what type of technology you need. And here's my thing. There is not one technology to rule them all. You need to have a suite of services. And I think for some reason, and this is only with our client base we're working with right now, with a lot of them, they're trying to find the one that's going to be perfect. Well, this one is good. No. If you're like me, you probably use 18 different programs in any 1 hour in your workday. You're using Google Docs, you're using Slack, you're using text, you're looking at Twitter. We can do this, and most of your attendees can do this. And if they can't, it's up to you to communicate to them how they can. So Zoom, what is Zoom great for? It's great for discussions and workshops. So anytime we needed to do that, we had them leap out of Hopin and do that portion. Hopin, what I'm in, ta-da! It's great for streaming. It's good for keynotes. Maybe it's good for large audiences and streaming out to those large audiences. Great, use that for that. Jamboard, what's that great for? It's awesome for workshops where people have to iterate ideas live and in the moment. Take them to Zoom, use a Jamboard. You know, these things are all mix and match. And if you don't think your attendees can follow you through the technology, that's on you. That is actually our job. You got to figure out a way to communicate to them. And that's what we did in this particular event. We had a steward and Hopin in a session that had to go to Zoom. There was a slide that had the link to Zoom, told them how to get to Zoom, and we continuously populated the chat box with that Zoom link. And on top of it, they could be emailed the Zoom link, and the Zoom link was available on the website. So we had plenty of different ways to communicate to them so that we could use the tools we needed to apply to the content for the audience what they needed to do to interact with it. So that's one of the first things. And inclusivity, and I'll end with this on our first kind of success metrics, audience mix, content mapping. Inclusivity is big, as we know. The best part about virtual is the world can come to your event. The complication about that is the world can come to your event. And you need to make sure, are there ways that they can have translation? Or can they have translation later? Closed captioning. Are you going to have to think about cultural differences and barriers? Because if the world's coming to you and you're doing an Olympic-sized event, you need to have Olympic-sized rules and inclusivity to absorb that wonderful opportunity to have them. Second thing that I'm going to talk about, which is another Caspian 10 essential, roles and responsibilities. This is huge in virtual because a lot of people know roles and responsibilities when it comes to live events. Most of us have that dialed in. We can see people, we know where we have gaps in our staffing, we know how to draw the grid and the schedule, and we can check on them and look at them and check them off when we see them. In the virtual world, that all goes away, because what you have is people can be in different places online and you can't see them. So as an organizer and a producer, the schedule is life. And especially when it's a 24-hour segment, we had a massive grid that basically spelled out when our stewards were working, when our supervisors were working, and some sort of a check-in process so we knew when they were working. Did they check in overnight? What supervisor was checking on them? And we even set up a Zoom room where they had to go to check in with their supervisor, and then they went into Hopin to do their shift. Other thing you have to think about is bio breaks and eating breaks. I mean, you do have to let them eat and pee, right? So we had to think about when are we going to have overlaps in our overnight all-day schedule, and when are those pinch points where we have to be able to let people take a break. But if somebody steps away and there's a crisis, is there somebody there to cover them? So the schedule was life. And like I said, having that off the grid kind of Zoom check-in for our staff was huge. And then supervisors, we actually had just a supervisor layer where they just bopped around. I was one of them, and I just kept making the rounds in Hopin to all the different sessions, the exhibit hall, the reception, the chat, basically what a supervisor would do on the floor of a large event. And we had 4 of us doing that because you have to cover a lot of ground virtually, and you have to cover a lot of time. Because if you think about 5 or 6 sessions across any given time period, and you add exhibit and all these other places, you're looking at not just, quote, 72 hours, you're looking at more like 400 hours that you've got to cover. So it's an interesting way of thinking about scheduling and supervision. So that's roles and responsibilities. And that's a big change now that we're in the virtual world. The other thing is communication. And we have an internal and external communication plans at Caspian. That's one of our essentials. And you have to be able to communicate with all those people that you have on your staff now that are running around. What if something happens somewhere when? Well, the best part is we say at Caspian, you can always predict 99% of what's going to happen. And then you plan for how you're going to deal with the 1 to 5%, let's say, that you have no idea, like the volcano in England that I went through, or the fire at Randolph, which burned the whole hotel down when all our VIPs were staying there in Oxford. So you're never going to always do that one, but you can have the 95% that you can cover. So our methods of communication, and I was going to write them all down, but I'll say them a little bit slowly, just because I think it's really important, again, to realize that suites of tools are not complicated. They're essential. And anyone who thinks suites of tools are complicated doesn't have a project management producer mind. You're in the wrong business if this is going to sound complicated. If your brain lights up like a Christmas tree, like mine does, and thinking about clean systems, even with multi-dimensional aspects of communication, you, my friend, are in the right profession. So what tools did we use? We used Unity. We needed to replicate our radios that we had on site. Great way of communicating across the board to every single person that was live on my team at once if there was an emergency. We didn't have to use it, but we could have. You don't get a fire extinguisher in your kitchen because you have a fire every day. You have it there because if you need it, it's really nice to have one. So we had an app called Unity. It's basically like an open signal or an open air radio for all of our team members. So if I click the button, I can talk to everybody all at once. Unity. You need one way to do that right away. Then our UK team, we had a whole team in England that was doing the night hours, which was awesome. They communicated with WhatsApp. It's ubiquitous, most places around the world. They actually were messaging each other on that. I didn't have to be on that, neither did my US managers, because we knew they had a supervisor, 2 supervisors, and they were designated to pop over into our US Slack, which is what we were using, if they had to escalate. So we only had 2 people that crossed the bridge to escalate. Otherwise, that was their comm tool. Ours was Slack for our US team. And again, that would pop over. Then the client was using Microsoft Teams. And we had 4 of us supervisors that if anything got escalated into Slack, or if something was in Slack escalating, we would hop over to Teams and tell the client and have them give us instruction on how they'd like us to handle it. So we had 3 separate team kind of comms: WhatsApp, Slack, and Teams, and they all had very different purposes. And then we had a Google Doc. Have to have an incident report. We have that on site in Oxford, and it's actually written, or a Google Doc. Here we did for all different teams, fed into the same Google Doc, what time something happened, how long it took to resolve. And if it was really important, it's something that we could have talked about as supervisors in our morning or evening meeting. And I say morning and evening loosely, because of course, depending on what time zone you're in, it could have been 3 a.m. So we had that. And then we also set up a situation room. So when we're on site in Oxford, we always have a room that we designate. That is the place we will meet up if all things go crazy, like the volcano in Iceland, where we were stranded for a week with all our entire people, 1,400 people, when that thing went off in Iceland. That was exciting. But we had a situation room. Same with the fire, situation room. There's designated people that go to the situation room. And in our instance, we set it up on the calendar every day at 6 a.m. PT, and it was just a Zoom link. So if Hopin had gone down, no offense, Hopin, or the internet had gone down, or there was a huge scandal, we knew we would meet at that Zoom link and we would solve that problem. And that's huge to have. So you need to have a situation room. So anyway, that was our internal communication plan. Then, I bet you know what's coming. There needs to be an external communication plan. What are you communicating out? And again, this is where you can predict with great authority, if you know your people and you know how people operate, how are you going to deal with all the things that come at you? And you're going to want to have those already banked. So with our 24 hours, we didn't have time to go back and forth to the client every time there was an issue and go, what about this? Somebody's angry about blah, 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 or somebody's trying to find blah, 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 or they want to know how to get a grant and get money out of you, which most attendees do for our clients. So what we did is we made that list, we wrote the different answers, we had the client approve it, and then we trained our stewards that if somebody asks this, copy paste. Somebody asks this, copy paste. And then for anything else, on the website or on a slide in the help desk exhibit session, which is what we did for it. So we could predict that and lessen the queue, which is your biggest goal with a virtual event with thousands and thousands and thousands of people, is you want 80% of them handled with something that's already assigned and dealt with. The 20% or the 10%, if you can get it, are the custom, they have to be one-offs, and then you basically staff to thinking 10% problems that I haven't thought about or that are going to be totally customized. That makes it very doable. It was doable, and we were able to answer every question because we had those different systems set up. The other thing is you always need an ETA message, and an ETA message saves you so that your staff, if they're like, I didn't know what to do. Well, we've all been in the airport when we don't know what's happening. They're delaying our gate. We're like, what is going on? And people get angry because there's no message of you're going to know this when. So you have that message. We are working on it. You will know in 10 minutes. We are working on it. You'll know in 10 more minutes. Whatever that is, but you train your people to constantly put out the message that we're working on it, whatever it is. But without ETAs, tempers, especially if 4,000 people, could go through the roof on your chat box, and you do not want that. So that was another way that we handled any of those types of things. And then we had a category that we went through with the client. What do you want us to escalate? What's important to you? What is so crazy bad that if we see it, we've got to put it in Teams and we text you? And that was kind of the red phone. Like, what happens that's a red phone incident that you must know, and we are going to just continue to scream about it until you get it? And we got a list of those items, and we wanted to make sure our staff knew that. So that was all our external communication plan. All right. The last thing that I am going to talk about, and I know we're going to go to questions, and I already see some, which is cool, is the data. We're going to come around back to success metrics. And this is where I get really, 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 really excited, because if you do success metrics at the beginning of your event and you're able to say, if we achieve X and Y with X and Y audiences, we're going to see this outcome. And you put numbers to all of it. Now, when we're on site and in person, people say, oh, it's so hard to measure events. I think that's all BS. But with online, you know exactly where these people go. You know how long they stayed there. You know if they clicked off. You know if they went somewhere else. You know what's most popular. All of a sudden, you have a dashboard. And I will give tip of the hat to Hopin. The dashboard on Hopin is amazing. You can see the traffic when it starts to spike, when it goes down. Were these hours worthwhile that we had staff 24 hours a day, or was it not? And so this is the final thing that we can look at, is this impacts our career. Metrics means we can make recommendations. We noticed that X happened. You had more people that came to this session, and these are the type of people you really want. So if you wanted these people and they came to this session, have more of this. And with virtual, you could have a follow-on event that's like a small Zoom, or you could have a discussion that's about just this. And if you're in the commercial or private type business, you could get that sponsored, because you could say to a sponsor, this is really popular. Well, how do you think so? They all came and they stayed and they never left. We had to kick them out. And now this makes, oh, what's that word? Oh, no more planner. If any people say planner, I'm going to come through and hurt you. But you went from a producer to a strategist. That is where we want to be. That's where it gets fun. That's where you do get to design experiences, where you do get to design strategy for a business. And if you see the data coming through with like a Hopin dashboard, you have the world at your fingertips to be able to say, I saw this. This is how that happens. These were your success metrics, because you will know them. This is your audience mix you desired, because you will know that, because you've done that at the very beginning. This was our content we mapped, and this is the content outcome that maps back to what this audience wants and maps back to what our metrics were. That's exciting, because then you also get to create, let's see if I have my last little piece of paper with my fun little drawing, an event horizon. Yay. This, not only are you a strategist now with an amazing title, because you're so cool, but you're going to be employed for a long time because there are going to be more and more and more events that have to happen when you have an event horizon. In the past, it was just our annual event. We have our annual conference. Annual conference happened. We hope we sold things. We don't know if it happened. Yes, you do. If you do a virtual event, you know exactly what happened. You know what was most popular. You recommend as a strategist, we do 4 more virtual events over the year. Guess what? You are now a lot more employable. That's why when people say this is a bad thing for the events industry, I'm like, if you're not crazy, crazy busy and doing this thing for a company, you missed the whole point of what virtual and hybrid is going to bring us as an opportunity in this industry. You missed it. Go sleep on a beach somewhere, because the rest of us are going to figure out that this is what is going to create more life, more excitement, and more ability for all of us to become strategists and no longer be relegated to the big heads think of something over here and they hand it off to logistics people. They're going to finally see the beauty of the side-by-side methodology and philosophy of the 10 essentials, which is exactly how we built it, and it works. And it's exciting when I start to see that this is where the entire industry is going. So, all right, I know I see some questions coming in. I wonder if I should just answer them, or if Carl's going to come back, but I can start. You're back.
Bring me in, Coach. So
All
one of
right.
the questions in the chat, and thank you, Heather, for an energetic end of our day session. We needed the energy.
Oh, good.
Someone asked, how did you come up with 10 essentials? Why aren't there 11 or 9?
Through 10 lessons of pain. I always like to say every lesson is born of pain, and every single one of the essentials comes with a painful thing that happened to me. And I am a systems-oriented thinker. And I was like, why did that just hit me in the face? That wasn't fun. I wonder if I could come up with a system or a process where that thing doesn't hit me in the face again. And so every time something like that would happen in my early career, I would create a process around it. And what I noticed is I was watching other people and the same thing was hitting them in the face over and over again. And I'm like, why do you let that happen? They're like, that's events. I guess they're crazy. Night before is always crazy. And I'm like, if I walked into a McDonald's restaurant and I saw them and they were like, it's crazy, making burgers every day, it's crazy. Woo, what's happening? I guess there's fries. I'd be like, you're really bad at your job. You should busy, sure, but you should kind of know a system and a process for making the fries come out on time, not figuring it out every time like it's new. And so I thought, all right, this industry needs a process. And so my first one was success metrics, because the client at the very beginning would hand me something and say, do it. And it was a little bit like getting an architect plan that had a toilet on the roof. And I'd be like, well, we shouldn't do this. This is a bad idea. And they're like, you don't know our goals. So I thought, aha, I'm going to get involved with your goals. That's what I'm going to do. And on and on and on it went.
So I know you can't name names, but I know you put some famous people on stage and done events for them. And are they easier or harder than the average working Joe like you and me to manage?
It depends. I will say I'm very lucky. Some of the largely famous people I've worked with are lovely because they're in the social good world. And so I will say actually working with executives is harder, because executives have a big head for some reason, no matter what industry they're in. They're like, I'm vice president of the blah, blah, bolt company. Don't you know me? And they've gotten used to the fact they have like 40 employees that are like, oh my gosh, it's Bob of the VP of blah, blah. And I don't know Bob, but he is really important. Whereas Archbishop Desmond Tutu will come to the stage and is so precious and hold your face in his hand and say how loved you are. And then you get Richard Branson, who, is trying to meet with his kids, and he shows up on time, and he's even early. And then you get Queen Rania, who just takes over a room with her glow. I mean, to me, those people, they get to be important. Vice President Bob from Blar Bolt Company, he will act worse, I find, than a queen, a literal queen. So.
Wow. So we definitely have some students in the audience, and they all want to be you, or at least some of them. What advice do you have for our 20-year-old participants this afternoon?
Every lesson's born of pain. I would say it doesn't happen overnight. And so you're going to have to work hard. You're going to have to work harder than you've ever worked before. And you don't get to complain. I mean, obviously, if something's horrible, like I worked in Hollywood, you can complain about that. That's horrible and abusive and evil. But working 10-hour days and getting blisters, that is this industry. Not sleeping. Oh, Crimea River, wazzies. I haven't slept since 1991. If you get to pee or eat, it's a bonus and a good day. But if you love it, which I do, then that's just that is the excitement of this industry, but that's the pace of this industry. And I find that people who kind of complain that it's hard, they top out. They'll probably be a lower level planner. And I'll even say that word. If you want to be a project manager or a producer, you're working your butt off and you're actually doing more than what's required. I've always, at every job I was in, I did more than what's required. So here's what my boss wanted. I'd come in the next day and go, I actually did a grid and showed how we could do blah, blah, and blah. They're like, really? I'm like, yeah, because I'm in it. I'm in it. Whereas the people who just do the bare minimum for me usually don't end up working for me, as you know, Carl. The bare minimum is actually not the job. The job is show us you got some goals and ambition and interest and creativity. And the thing that everybody has in their hands that I didn't have when I was in school is this and an iPad. You can look up YouTube videos, how-to videos. You can learn everything. You could learn Excel. But you can do everything with this and this. And so use it and impress your boss, work your ass off, and you can go faster and farther and a lot better in your career. But if you want to top out, just do what's meh, meh.
You're our second presenter to use the word ass during a presentation. It's great.
Hey, there you go. Yay.
I want to ask a question about risk management, because I chatted with you before this presentation, and I'm aware that during the production of this 3-day forum that you actually had people on payroll that you paid to do nothing.
Yes.
Why would you have people on payroll to do nothing?
Because I liken it to insurance. And it's so funny how whenever I tell my staff, if I have a lead, I go, how many people did you book for that event? And they're like, well, I have this many room leads and this many. And I'm like, that sounds like it's just enough. And they're like, yes. And I'm like, then you're wrong. You're wrong. Good day, sir. And they're like, what? What do you mean? And I go, I am not paying you to be God. Unless you are God. If you are God, I have a lot of questions about the dinosaurs. guessing you aren't. So if you're not God, you need insurance. That's why we all pay for it on our cars. I haven't gotten in an accident since whenever, but I still pay every day. I have health insurance. We all do. So we expect that we have to pay for things and we don't know if it's going to happen, but we're so glad if it's there if it does. Live events are the same way. And I will say, women, I'm looking at you. Women try to somehow be perfect as though we're going to get a sticker on our head if it's like, I got just the right people in just the right moment. There is no stickers. I've been working for 20 some years. There's no stickers. No one will give you a sticker for that. You know what they will do? They'll give you a kick in the face if you don't have enough people and there's a crisis. So I, every lesson born of pain, do not want to have that kick in the face. So I hired 3 people. You're right, Carl, during that 24-hour, 3-day thing. And I said, I don't even know what you're going to do. I'm going to give you a day rate for 3 days. If I need you, I'll call you. You will get paid even if you do nothing. That is my fire extinguisher in the kitchen. That is my car insurance. And if I need it, I will have it. And that is a properly staffed event. And I always tell my staff that it is not a properly staffed event until I see somebody in the corner sitting on their ass. That's your third S.
Nice. All right. Well, I'm going to ask a third question. I'm going to ask a kind of a closing question, but I'm also going to invite Dina Ibrahim to join us. If you can go scare her up and wrap up the session here. Hey, Dina.
Heather, that was fantastic.
Oh, good.
The theme of our sessions today with this awesome morning with Dina and her team doing this whole entertainment alliance thing and bringing in some incredible speakers and topics, and all of our people who are here this afternoon talking about the events industry and experiences and how that's growing, and watching how the Super Bowl halftime shows put together like this incredible stuff. Maybe I could ask the two of you, where is the intersection of entertainment and events, and why are these things colliding? And it's actually education, events, and higher ed. It's come together in a beautiful way today. So maybe you could both talk a little bit about entertainment and events and why these things actually need to be overlapping.
Well, I know Heather and I have spoken to you about that very thing. We are in that education is entertainment and events is entertainment. And if you're not entertained, you're not engaged with the content. And whether you're sitting in a classroom or you're attending an event, if you're not feeling it, if you're not experiencing it, if you're not entertained on a fundamental level, why are you even there? So I think entertainment is really the antithesis of boredom.
I like that.
So if you're just bored to tears, then, you need to take a nap and this is a chore, right? But what you really want is to create an experience, even in entertainment, in events, in education. It's all the same where you walk away feeling inspired, feeling changed, like you've really come away with something of value.
I totally agree. I mean, I think if somebody says, they didn't engage or they didn't do that, I'm like, that's your fault. That's our fault. That's our fault. And so if we haven't made something that we would be dying to attend, what are we doing? Like, what are we in this for? And I come from the movie industry, the movie and TV industry. That was my first career. And then I was in broadcast news. And so the way I see this confluence is something that was always meant to be, because screens are entertaining by their nature. I mean, I've been watching this, a fictional show on soccer, which is my favorite thing, every night. And I keep going way too late in the night because it's addicting. And my thing is, if they can make me do that, nobody's paying me to watch that show. Nobody's forcing me to. I'm not getting a degree out of it. And I'm watching it till midnight and it's ruining my life right now. Then that means we can do things with screens. And when people say, oh, sponsors, they don't like it, they don't see the value, I'm like, oh, so they've never run an ad on TV. Oh, they've never run ads on YouTube. Oh, they've done that. Okay, then they're sponsoring things. You've just made something non-interesting. They're not doing booths on screens, because you don't do a booth on a screen. You do an ad. You do videos. You do entertainment. You do infotainment. And it's this, and you do narrative, you do storytelling, you hook people with surprise. I mean, 9 things that you can't eat and 1 that will surprise you. Like, we know how to do this. So we just need to adopt it and have fun with it.
Excellent. Well, Heather, thank you for that presentation. Dean and I are going to wrap it up for our audience, and you got some really great comments in the chat, and looking forward to hearing from you again in the near future.
Cool. Thanks so much, everybody. Bye.
Thank you, Heather.